Queer Hockey Nova Scotia is Halifax's first by queer for queer hockey organization. I honestly think that if the Mighty Ducks had come out closer to when the school year started, that I would have started playing as a kid. You know, I came out as queer quite young. I was 16 when I told my friends. Yeah, it got pretty big. Last year we had 11 teams. So it takes place over 3 days, the same weekend as Pride in Halifax.
Welcome back to the Pride and Puck podcast. This is episode number 24 for season 3. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Pride Puck Podcast and on YouTube. So please jump over to YouTube and give us a subscribe and some likes and some comments and share some love over there. Today, we are heading back to Canada and another awesome guest, I think, lined up today, Nora Rennick Reinhardt. How are you?
I'm good and happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. Whereabouts are you located in Canada?
So I live in Halifax, Nova Scotia, otherwise known as Chibuktuk, which is the indigenous name for the area. And it's like all the way at the eastern side of Canada. Nova Scotia is like a peninsula, and then Halifax is like a peninsula on the peninsula at the very edge. It's basically in the ocean.
Okay. Well, I live on a peninsula here, so there's already a strong connection, I think, between
Yeah, so
us.
you understand. Yeah, it's all water.
You were feeling a little bit under the weather the last day. Are you feeling better now, I hope?
I am, thank you. Yeah, no, as I was saying before, I'm a college professor, and this semester is in that moment where it's all downhill really fast, and so I needed a night to sort of sleep it off. But I'm feeling a lot better after a nice Saturday.
Well, hopefully you don't need another night to sleep it off after you appear on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm gonna need a whole weekend. I'm so sorry, I can't go to work on Monday.
Your association and why I've got you on today, and I think I'm pretty sure, I'm just trying to think back through last season, because season 1 was all teams and people from Australia. Season 2 branched out obviously to North America. I'm pretty sure you're the first person from Queer Hockey Nova Scotia, which is cool. Can you just sort of explain your role within that organisation?
Sure. So Queer Hockey Nova Scotia is Halifax's first by queer for queer hockey organization. And it was started by Jay McKellar and David Matthew Lewis back in 2022. I moved to Halifax that same year and started going to pickups and eventually joined the board and have been on the board since summer of 23. So at this point, I am one of 5 acting board members that help run the organization on the day-to-day. So Queer Hockey Nova Scotia has a number of projects ongoing. We have an intramural league. We have 3 teams that play weekly during the regular October to April season. We also do friendship games where we travel to other parts of the province to host games so that queer skaters in those areas don't have to travel into the city. We are hoping to bring in some more skill development over the summer. We do pickup games. We have a gear library. We're really hoping to expand. And our biggest project annually is our HFX Pride Cup tournament, which last year we had 170 players from all over North America come. We had 11 teams, and it happens on Pride weekend here in Halifax, and that's huge. So my role in the organization, I have 2 sort of titles within the board. I'm the volunteer coordinator and the community organizer. I spearhead community projects. I write a lot of manuals where we try to define what we're trying to do with hockey culture and initiate and negotiate conversations between folks who may be having issues with each other. And then I just manage all of the volunteers as well. So we have folks from our own organization who run our scorekeeping and music during all of our games. So I help wrangle those folks.
Awesome. And we'll get into all of that a little bit later on in the podcast. But I want to know a little bit about you as well. And I'm sure, 100% sure that the listeners and the viewers want to know a little bit about you as well. You actually grew up in the US. Did you play hockey at all growing up? Was it a sport that you were interested in? Because I know in the US, obviously, it's not it's part of those, I suppose, four big sporting leagues, but it's not right up there in the US. Was hockey something on your radar?
I honestly think that if the Mighty Ducks had come out closer to when the school year started, that I would have started playing as a kid. I was obsessed, but it came out in the summer and like I wanted to play street hockey. And then by the time school started, I forgot it existed. I was, 9 or 10 years old. Just totally blew my mind. I grew up outside of Boston. We were one of the only places that I know of that had a girls hockey team for our high school. And I actually dated one of them much later in a different city, which was very funny. But no, it wasn't on my radar at all. I was not an athletic teenager or child or young adult. And I didn't start playing hockey until my mid 30s. I got sort of peer pressured into it and never looked back.
Boston is a bit of a hockey hotbed, so it does make sense. You're probably one of the one spots in the US
Yeah.
where hockey is.
Hockey, and then I lived in Chicago, which is another one of the big ones. But I think looking back, it was really impressive that my high school did have a girls team because that would have been, the 90s and very early 2000s. And from talking to a lot of other Americans who started playing in their adulthood, that would not have been the case. Or even Canadians, the female identified folks that I'm playing with all had to play on the men's teams growing up because there weren't women's teams available for them.
Yeah, and it's good that it's changing in a lot of places around the world, that we have women's hockey growing and growing and growing. Was sport something that was it something that you were looking for, like in terms of inclusive aspect of it? Was that sort of a reason why maybe you didn't look at sport at all? Were you comfortable in sport? Was it something that you didn't even care about? You were like, I'm playing sport, I don't care? Or was it something in the back of your mind where you wanted to find an inclusive space?
I mean, absolutely. I think, I came out as queer quite young. I was 16 when I told my friends, and it was such a huge part of my identity as being that sort of othered identity, othered personality type of person. And so I was not a team player. I had never played team sports. I think I played 1 year of like childhood soccer, and we lost every single game. And my mom was like, does that hurt your feelings? And I was like, no, because somebody has to make the other teams feel good about themselves. Like it was like that competition has like never been in my blood. So I was really afraid that joining team sports was going to mean that other people were relying on me, and if I let them down, then that was on me, and that kind of anxiety was really huge. So it wasn't until I was in my mid 30s that I was really able to come to group sports, team sports, and find a place to understand, a way to understand that I could also be part of success. And that was really huge. But the first team that I played for in Chicago, shout out to the Tigers, the Evanston Tigers outside of Chicago, very inclusive, very friendly, other queer players, queer leadership. Our captain was a queer woman. And that really made it feel like when I went to their first organizing meeting, that really is what made it feel like it was going to be an okay space to join and risk myself in that way.
Did you hear any sort of backlash in terms of homophobia, etc., like that playing hockey?
Not at that point. So that would have been 2018, and it was a brand new team, and I think everyone was just really scared to be on the ice in their gear for the first time, like shaking, So there wasn't a homophobia, I think, because also our captain was queer, and since then I've had a really charmed series of events, a series of opportunities. I played for the Evanston Tigers for a single year. In the US, that would have been the D7, which is the absolute newbies. Never been on the ice before. And then I moved to Madison, Wisconsin, which is just an absolute haven for queer hockey. Madison is home to not only the Dread Pirates, which is a Princess Bride themed women's hockey organization that is super queer friendly, but also home to the Madison Gay Hockey Association, which is the largest gay hockey association in the world. They have over 300 skaters and a waiting list of 150. So I really managed to end up in places where that wasn't part of my initial experience.
Yeah, I'll have to get some people on from Madison and have a
I can
chat.
hook you up.
100%.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we'll have to do that after the show.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm starting hockey for the. It's funny when you say that you've started for the first time in your 30s. I'm 40, and I've had so many people say to me, "God, you watch hockey all the time, and you got the podcast, and you don't play." Now I'm starting next month for the first time, which is cool, and it just made me laugh. You said the Div 7. I'll be in the same, the lowest. So we'll see how we go.
It's great. You're gonna love it. I mean, there's something so transformative about putting that gear on and getting on the ice. If you have any say in it, ask to learn how to fall first, because my first coach, she brought us out on the ice. We're all like, like walking in our skates, right? Or like some of them have already fallen down. And she does a fall clinic. And so we basically just learn how to fall. And there's this freedom in your body around throwing yourself around and not worrying about being hurt. Like I'm almost 42. Like, and I just feel like I'm like, I could break sleeping wrong. Like I'll get up and my arm just like won't operate anymore. But it's so freeing. It's like being 10 years old. All of a sudden you can just play at full force, and it is still dangerous, but there is this sense of safety that comes with the gear.
Yeah, I totally get it too with the age. I got up to go to the gym the other day, and I went to put some shorts on, and I felt something in the lower back.
That was your mistake. Bending over, never.
Yeah, exactly. How did it feel for you though to be a part of a hockey club or a hockey team that was so inclusive? How did you feel having that, where you could go into a locker room and you could be yourself and not have any worries?
It was really freeing. I mean, again, I had so much anxiety about being the person that brought a team down, that being able to go into a locker room and be uplifted by my teammates was so huge. That first season really felt like our Disney movie. We had never been, like most of us had never been on the ice before, and we went on to win our D7 championship, right? In a
That's
shootout. I mean,
awesome.
it was just like, we felt like we were the Mighty Ducks, like. And then moving up to Madison was the first time. So the Tigers were a women's club, and there were no trans folks on that team. Moving up to Madison, I sat down at our first table just to learn about, it was a round table to talk about the season for the Pirates. And it was so gender diverse. There were trans mask folks, there were trans women, there were folks I couldn't tell what was happening. They gave a whole speech on what to do if you mess up on someone's pronouns. And that was huge. Being in a dressing room for the first time, mixed genders. I was anxious because I'd never been in that space with male identified folks, but the moment someone's shirt came off, it was just like, oh, this is just normal, those are just your teammates. And I think that it's allowed me to really understand and embrace what queerness can bring to self-confidence and identity and community in a way that I hadn't really had the opportunity to experience before.
How much have you taken from your experience in Madison, I suppose, to now what you're doing at Queer Hockey Nova Scotia?
Tons. Absolutely tons. I mean, like literally tons, because we keep getting my bestie from them to like help us with our website and stuff like that. So like, thank you, Creona. You are magic. So, a lot. They are such a thriving organization, and they do such a phenomenal job of setting up the culture and recreating hockey to exclude the traditional toxic masculine standbys. When I started in working with Queer Hockey Nova Scotia, I was a bit tentative at first. The out on the outset, their main goals were just to create spaces to play. And as the organization grew and we moved into filing for nonprofit status, we really asked ourselves the question, are we an organization that hosts spaces for queer people to play hockey, or are we a queer organization? And the difference between that is that a queer organization is doing the queer work, the labor of rethinking, the work to rebuild that culture, to redefine what this world could look like, using queerness as our guide. And took a little bit of Queerness 101 for us to sort of think about what that would look like. But it's always going back to Madison and saying, hey, how did you do this the first year? How did you do this the sixth year? Like, what have you guys done in scenarios where? So I'll give one example. So MGHA is queer identified plus allies. QHNS, Queer Hockey Nova Scotia, for the moment, welcomes folks who identify as queer only. This was something that we really struggled with because there is a certain kind of magic that happens in a queer space that allows allies, in that folks are able to question their identity, learn more about their identity. We build bonds that are stronger, and we avoid gatekeeping. We ended up deciding that for the moment, until we really establish ourselves and really establish the culture, that this is the only place for only queer people to be and play hockey. There are other leagues where there are lots of queer folks that are also playing alongside straight folks and allies, and the allyship has not always proven itself to be a really true thing. So we sort of, we routinely come back and ask this question, like, we could use more players. Do we open this to allies? And we keep coming back to, no, maybe when we're that large and we have reset the culture and we can have a 70-30 self-identified and ally, maybe we'll feel like we are able to follow in the footsteps of MGHA and gain that size strength. But until we're able to do that, that's just one example. Yeah.
Was there something that was the number one for Queer Hockey Nova Scotia when you're putting up, I suppose, maybe brainstorming ideas and things like that? Was there one thing that was sat at the top in terms of, we need to change this culture? Like, this is the one thing that we need to have changed?
Absolutely. I think really at the top is multi-level play, which is a scenario in which we have people on the ice playing with each other that have come from all different skill levels. So when you're a really large organization, you can break up between D7, D6, recreational, advanced, competitive. We don't have the luxury of that. And so we have a full contact, no checking league that welcomes skaters who have never skated before in their life and people who played all the way through college. And that makes for really tricky on ice scenarios. It means that the folks who are experienced really have to have a lot of control. They are focusing not on dominance or pressure, they're focusing on skills, passing, reading the other players, reading the ice. And that has really reset, I think, a lot of the expectations of that space. So I would say multi-level players are number one. I could list like 10, but you asked for one and I'll give you one.
And how did you end up at Queer Hockey Nova Scotia? So you've gone from growing up in Boston to Chicago, then you found yourself in Madison. How did you end up north of the border?
Well, so I went to college in Baltimore. I moved to Chicago. I was there for about 10 years, started playing hockey. Then I went to Madison for graduate school. So I applied for a job in Halifax. I got offered the job and knew that I was moving, knew that I wanted to play hockey. The queer hockey world is quite small, as I'm sure you're finding out, right?
Yeah.
And so I had a friend on my team at MGHA who had played with Jay McKellar from Team Trans. Jay was running the QHNS pickups. And so I reached out to Jay and said, hey, I'm moving to Halifax. Like, I would love to get involved. Also, can you help me find an apartment? And he was like, absolutely. So we really connected there. And then when I landed, I had a safe space to sort of start playing and get more and more involved as it went.
And Queer Hockey Nova Scotia, just going by what I've read and on the website, it's very much, it feels like the First Nations people in the area, etc., is very much an important part of the organisation and acknowledging that. Can you just talk us through that as well? Because I know that in Australia we have Indigenous First Nations people here, and it does create a lot of sort of controversy just to do the little things here to acknowledge those people before us. So how important is it for the Queer Hockey Nova Scotia?
So first of all, I'll say that having lived in the United States, Canada is doing a much better job at integrating land acknowledgements and relationships with First Nations people than a lot of other places in the world, from my perspective. It is a standard that needs to get addressed. I would say that Queer Hockey Nova Scotia believes that all liberation is tied together, and that we're not free until everyone is free. So it felt really important for us to really commit to not only acknowledging First Nations folks and working with First Nations folks to, where appropriate, do land acknowledgements or welcoming events where we have elders attend. Unfortunately, the last time we tried to do that, there was a torrential downpour and all the roads were washed out, so it didn't end up happening. We're still trying, but giving dedicated land acknowledgements, being held accountable, and also tying our liberation with liberation all over the world. So liberation with the Ukraine, liberation with Palestine, liberation with queer folks in other nations across the globe that are facing much more stringent legal punishment than we are. I'm looking south of the border of my own country at the moment and sort of saying this out loud and going to get stopped at a border agent somewhere. But, I think that that's really important. And I think it's in line with how we define what it is to queer hockey. Queering hockey means that we just don't ride the coattails of what has been, that we don't accept the tradition of what is expected at a hockey game, that we think about how we want to be held accountable and how we want to be in community with the space, the land, the people around us, our community members. We are always looking to build additional scholarships. We would like to offer scholarships to anyone who identifies as racially diverse or non-white, so African Nova Scotia, which we mentioned on the website as well as Indigenous folks, people of color, etc. And that's really important to us. So I think it's part of that queering of hockey. Yeah.
And the Coloured Hockey League of the Maritimes was founded in.
Just gonna turn a light on. Sorry, it's like right at. Okay, I'm back.
The Coloured Hockey League of the Maritimes was founded in Halifax. Is there still a connection, or is there a link between that era of hockey in the area and Queer Hockey Nova Scotia?
I would say not as much, but I'm not actually sure how active that history still is. We discovered that when we were doing the research for our land acknowledgement. So I think that Halifax prides itself as having quite a strong tie to the history of hockey. At least one of our highway road signs says the birthplace of hockey. Now, I don't know if that's true. It also says like best place to buy pine trees at Christmas. But I think that Africville in Nova Scotia, which is the African Nova Scotia culture hub, is currently in what I would say is a renaissance. There's a lot of money going into that area to culturally build that. So I will be curious to see if there comes a time when they're more involved with active hockey and if they're more involved with queerness. I think a lot of these intersections are tricky. I think that hockey is an incredibly expensive sport. It's incredibly divisive and white. And so when we're talking about adult sports, and this is something that I experienced in Canada that is very different from the US, because almost everybody learns to play hockey as a kid, there's not a ton of resources for adult hockey education. We are hoping to host an 8-week Learn to Skate program for folks who didn't learn to play or who played as a kid, felt ostracized and uncomfortable and left the sport. In the US, because people didn't learn to play as kids, there are a lot more resources. So I think the way that these intersections all come to a head is we're an adult league of people who have a really established relationship to hockey. They have financial obligations already as adults. And how can we lower the barriers for entry for folks who have not felt comfortable in those areas and make it a space where people feel comfortable to join us? Those are our goals.
Are there many you might actually know the number. Are there many black players that play within Queer Hockey Nova Scotia? Because across the history, black representation within hockey has just been so low. It just hasn't been there. Is there many black players within Queer Hockey Nova Scotia?
I would say that it feels proportional to the overall makeup, like racialized population of Halifax, which is very white. But we do have a fair number of racialized folks, so folks who are mixed race, folks who are Asian. It's not something that we've been tracking really closely. So it's something that we've considered tracking through registration in the future, just to sort of get a sense of where we could be developing more programming or outreach. But this is just our first year doing a regular league. So we're always adding things to our list to do in future years.
And speaking of that league, the Rainbow League, how awesome is it to have that available?
That's really awesome.
It must be, yeah. It's has it had one year, or is it in its second year this year? Is that correct?
It's the first year. We have 3 games left in our playoffs. So we've got 2 tomorrow, and then our final championship game, first ever final championship game, is on Sunday the 30th. Yeah, it's fantastic. I get to the rink every week and I'm like, oh my God, I get to play with all my friends. Like, I think what's really interesting is that there are so many hockey organizations in Halifax, and we're so new that we are trying to make a name for ourselves because we're up against folks and organizations that are much more established. So we're having a hard time getting ice because so many of the leagues already have relationships with rinks in the area. And there's no night of the week where like another league isn't playing. So this season we had enough for 3 teams with fairly low numbers. I think there's like 11 skaters per team total. And so we have 35, 40 like players at full time, and then we have 48 spares who are all signed up to other leagues, but like, yeah, no, this is more fun and I want to be here. I just like have a league game over there. So I think it's going to be an uphill battle to really make a place for ourselves and really say we are doing things different, we are doing things better, we want to be the place that you want to come to. How can we do that? But gosh, it's so fun.
Is there one thing that any feedback, I suppose, or anything that you've had since the league started where people have come up to you and said, this is what I've been looking for, or this is what I was missing in hockey, or anything like that?
Yeah, like every day. It's really phenomenal. We've had people after the first Pride Cup tournament, so that would have been 23. We had people writing in saying, I've never been in a locker room full of just queer people. I've never been on the ice with just queer people. This was the most fun event we've ever skated at. I will come back every single year because this event was such a great time. And I think we really rode that high. We're like a full year. We were like, okay, we're doing something good. But we feel it. And sometimes I feel especially good when people come from other leagues and they spare and they're like, is this how it always is? This is really fun. And they're like, yeah, we're better. Like, no shade, but we're better.
And that's how it should be. Like, hockey should just be fun. It shouldn't be, especially in these local levels, these I suppose grassroots levels. It should just be fun. Everyone should just be out there enjoying themselves.
I think people are really surprised at how organized we are, and I think that is like very much due to MGHA being such a wonderful guide. But people have come and been like, "Oh, you have refs," and we're like, "Excuse you, of course we have refs. Like we got all new jerseys, and we this is another MGHA tradition that I stole from them, which is that once you have your team, you get assigned a color, but you get to name your own team. So we have 3 teams this year. We have the Purple Menaces. We have the white team, which is Yeti to Rumble. And then we have the green team, which is Ogre the Rainbow. So we're all sort of like cryptids this year, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, I mean, I just think that there's so many great things about it.
Is there a certain amount of teams that you have a limit on that you got an eye for the league to grow to, or is it just, let's see where it goes?
Honestly, at this point, it's let's see where we go. I mean, our biggest challenge, as I said, is getting ice time. So we're really limited by that. And then that determines how many people we can have join. But I think if we'd had enough interest for 4 teams, 5 teams, we would have made it work with 4 teams or 5 teams. We took the number that we had and we made the teams that we were able to make. We spent a lot of time trying to make sure that the teams were even. Um, so we have folks on each team that are experienced, folks who are new, folks who are in the middle but score higher, in the middle but score lower. We had a whole system with color coding and math to try to determine, and it's really borne out. You can really see in our stats over the course of the season that it's right around. We've got lots of ties, we've got lots of 1-point games, and that really to us meant that we had succeeded in creating a league that felt on an even playing field.
And Queer Hockey Nova Scotia also has the Ospreys as well. Can you just explain what the Ospreys are?
Sure. So after the amazing feedback from the first Pride Cup tournament in 2023, we decided to put together a Queer Hockey Nova Scotia team. That team has a few functions. One is those travel games that go to other places in Nova Scotia to do queer visit games, queer friendship games, as we call them. We also did a year in a co-ed league. That wasn't our favorite experience. It was a co-ed league. And then when we got to the organizing meeting, they defined for us that what co-ed meant was that there had to be at least 2 females on every team, except some teams couldn't find any, so they don't. And we were coming in with trans folks and a lot of women. And, I think one of the really big things for queer teams is that the body size is very different. So trans masc folks tend to be smaller than cis men. Trans women tend to be large, and that intimidates people. And so we really, that is the experience that I will say I've had the most homophobic feeling experiences, whether or not it was outward verbal scenarios, outward verbal comments. We did field a couple from refs during that. But just the unyielding toxic aggression that we faced as a team. We had multiple people leave the season for concussions, and there was just no mechanism for giving feedback that felt like we were ever being heard. It felt like a Herculean effort to keep people upbeat during that, to get back into the dressing room at the end of every game after losing by 7, 8, 10, 12, and say, great game, everyone. Here are 2 players of the game. These are the specific things they did well. We think all of you are getting better. And that was an experience. So we decided not to do that again. But the Ospreys live on. We still have our jerseys. We will come to you. And so we use those jerseys as our like initial symbol in our travel team jerseys.
I hope not, but did you have any players walk away from that and say, I don't want to play anymore?
We're always worried about that, right? We're always worried that, there's such a fine line between community development and micromanagement. It's something that we deal with in the Rainbow League, where we're really trying to rebuild the culture, but that means that many folks have to do some unlearning and some relearning, neither of which are easy. We're always worried that folks will get turned off and walk away. We haven't yet had that experience. We lost folks during the season due to injury, but they've all come back. And now that we're doing our own league, where it feels like we're really keeping ourselves safe, we're keeping each other safe, we're keeping each other supported, that as of now, we have not really had anyone walk away because of the hockey.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because it's I suppose it's a space where people would show up and say, this is where I come not to be treated in a certain way, so that's good to hear. The Halifax Pride tournament, can you just explain that tournament, because it's absolutely massive?
Yeah, it got pretty big. Last year we had 11 teams. So it takes place over 3 days, the same weekend as Pride in Halifax. And folks can either enter as a free agent and get placed on a team based on their self-assessment of their skills, or teams can enter together and come as a team. So we have had Team Trans come both in 2023 and 2024. We had Queer Hockey Hamilton, who we have been in contact with since then, just to, shoot the breeze and build tactics for building queer hockey in Canada. The Ottawa Otters. So there are leagues that send entire teams, and then we have our own teams. So we opened it up this year for the captains of the Rainbow League to enter their teams into the Pride Cup if they would like to. So it's very likely that there could be a Ogre the Rainbow, Yeti to Rumble, Purple Menaces this year. And people come from all over the place. We had, as I said, 170 skaters our first year. And I like to say that our two major successes was that nobody got COVID and one person got a boyfriend, right? Like, we did it. Great job,
That's
everyone.
It.
We can go
Job
home.
done.
Like, yeah, they're still together. So like.
Do you get much support from, because I do know just from following hockey, how big the Halifax Mooseheads are. Do you get support from places like that just for visibility for Queer Hockey Nova Scotia, or is there still work to be done in that space?
There's definitely still work to be done in that space. I think, I was saying earlier that Canada has done a lot to incorporate, for lack of a more nuanced phrase, DEI into everyday spaces. But there are still a lot of organizations that feel the need to check off a box on their DEI initiatives. And we have had to end some relationships with larger organizations because they didn't really, in the end, it didn't really feel like they had our best interests at heart, which is a bummer. The Mooseheads we've reached out to for sponsorship. They'll always give us a couple of hats that say Mooseheads. We've never had anyone from their organization reach out to us. We asked to use the Scotiabank Center for the Pride Cup. I don't know. They said they take their ice out for the summer, but we're like, put it back in. So if you know anyone, have them reach out. But no, so I mean, I think that still, like, we are a very small hockey organization, 3 teams. Even our women's league has 17 teams. So like, there's a lot of people going to a lot of hockey, and Mooseheads are, I don't even know what they call it here, semi-pro, but yeah, we don't have a formal connection with them at this point.
And the Halifax Pride, the 3-day tournament, it's obviously not, I suppose, obviously the hockey on the ice is the big thing part of it. Are there other things happening around the hockey on the ice? I know that Queer Hockey Nova Scotia has an outreach program as well. So is there other things happening around the ice where you're talking to community and things like that?
Absolutely. In a couple of different ways. So first, we definitely try to have off-ice events for folks to intermingle and meet each other. Sometimes it's not, playing against someone is not always the best way to make new friends. So for example,
shooting pucks at someone.
Yeah. It's me. I'm always that person. I'm like the ice muppet. I'm basically like, hi, how are you? It's nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. And they're like, okay, fine. No, so we always like to have a kickoff event that is off ice that folks can come to. Last year we had drag performances, and we had a large number of folks come to that event and really have a chance to see people face to face, not in their gear, and meet up. We also encourage folks to stay downtown where they can take advantage of Pride events that are going on. I know a lot of my team from last year went to the Pride Parade as a group, and so they were texting the group chat, and I was like, don't drink too much, we have a game at 4, so I think that's really important. And then we do connect with other organizations around the city. So many of our members, of our skaters, are connected with organizations throughout the city. So we have had sexual health folks come out and have tables. During our first Pride Cup, they were actually paying folks to take surveys and give blood samples to do research in sexual health. And they were also doing STI testing, like on site, which was really cool. We also have folks who are part of Nova Scotia youth projects. So we have done a couple group skates. We're hoping to try to put together a youth game at some point with them, or a clinic with them, so that queer youth can come out and get on the ice and have some adult queer role models who play hockey for fun as an outlet, just like have that opportunity to see that modeled for them. Yeah, and always looking to try to also support queer businesses. So whenever we can, we reach out to queer businesses for hosting for events, trying to bring the money back into the community and really keep it there as much as we can.
And do you have many people that that arrive at, say, the tournament, the 3-day Halifax Pride tournament, not to play hockey, but just to be there and be part of the community? Because it feels like, obviously, you've got the Rainbow League and you've got the tournament and there's so much hockey, but it feels like you're building a community more than anything else. And the people that just show up just to be in that space to say, I can be myself. This is awesome. I'm just happy to be here.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, one of the ways in which we're really enshrining that into our community politics is that we have 3 levels of membership for the Rainbow League, but that sort of is translating over and over. So we have full-time skaters who are on a team, we have spares or part-time skaters, and then we have non-skating members. And non-skating members do a certain number of volunteer hours. Everyone on the league, whether you're a spare or a member, a full-time member or a non-skating member, everyone does volunteer hours. And those volunteer hours can either be on a committee so that you help us when we are at capacity for small projects. We reach out to our volunteers. So we have volunteers doing communicating with locations to host events. We have them working on social media. We have them running our stats. And then we also have all of our, as I said earlier, our booth crew. All of our booth crews are from internally from the league. So sometimes those are skaters on the team that's not playing, because we have 3 teams. So 2 of them are always on the ice. And then some of them are non-skating members. And we do definitely see that at the Pride Cup as well. I think it's an opportunity for people to travel with their friends. And so teams will bring 1 or 2 people, they'll bring partners. Last year, I had 2 friends from Wisconsin come out just to help out. So they ran the booth a number of times. They got a hotel room near the rink so that we had someplace to crash between games. And it was just really wonderful having them on hand to build that community, but not feel pressured to be on the ice and in there as well.
Have you had a wedding proposal on the ice yet in one of
Not
those
yet.
tournaments?
Ooh, maybe okay. I mean, like, we're gonna see where those 2 guys are at from the first Pride Cup. I'm gonna email them. I'm gonna be like, "Hey, you going?"
Yeah, no pressure.
Someday.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Yeah.
If you're the winner of the tournament, what do you get?
What a great question. I say that because I spent all day doing secret crafts for the championship for the league. The Halifax Pride Cup is like, it's like 2 feet tall. It's like it's massive, but and it is like a very traditional hockey trophy that has had beer drunk out of it. We are trying to, in the spirit of rethinking hockey culture, we really decided for the Rainbow League, we're like, well, why? Like, why is it a trophy? Like, what does that really bring to this conversation? So I'll just like, it's not done yet. But we did paper mache like the world's largest hockey puck, and it's gonna get covered in disco tiles.
That's amazing.
And then bedazzled with our logo. So that, I mean, like secrets, but yeah, we're really trying to bring as much sort of queer humor and scrappiness and stereotypes and like really find the joy, because joy is motivational and we need that right now.
That's amazing. I love it. When is the Halifax Pride Cup tournament? I don't think it's far away.
It's in July, so we've got a little bit of time. It's usually the 3rd weekend in July, in line with Halifax Pride itself, the festival. The only reason I hesitate to give you a date is that we have applied for ice, but we have not gotten that guaranteed yet. So I don't want to say something and then have that not be true, but it will either be the same weekend as Halifax Pride or one of the weekends on either side of that.
And also the Pride Cup tournament logo. I know that's something that you put the feelers out. Yeah, you got the T-shirt on there.
Yeah, from last year.
Is that something for anyone to apply for? Is it for queer folk who want to create something?
We have been using that as an opportunity to connect to artists, new artists every year. We put a call out that says we are looking for a queer artist to design a logo for us. We are going to give preference to folks who are local and folks who are racialized, so folks of color. And then from there, we go through our selections and we pick one. We actually selected our candidate, our finalist for this year's Pride Cup this morning, and I emailed them. So I'm very excited.
Hey.
But yeah, we always get about somewhere between 10 and 12 entries and are able to then pay folks to do an initial sketch. And so we usually put 2 to 3 people to pay to do an initial sketch, and then whoever we choose then gets a larger sum at the end of the project. The past years with this wonderful lobster, which has like hockey puck joints and like so cute, was designed by Kaylin Gerard, who is a local Two-Spirit Indigenous artist. So we were really excited to get to work with her. Her dad actually works at the same college that I do, and I was in his office. He doesn't know I was with Queer Hockey Nova Scotia, and he was like, "My daughter just got this amazing opportunity," and I was like, "I hired her. That was me." So Halifax is very small.
That's awesome. Absolutely awesome. Have you won the tournament yourself?
Oh no. We were runners up last year. We were so close. I think we were like 1 goal behind. So I feel like I won, but also someone has to make the other teams feel good about themselves, and I'm just happy to be here.
Oh, well, hopefully this podcast can give you a bit of good juju and
Yeah.
get you over the line this year.
Honestly, as long as everybody has fun, I'm happy. Just not competitive. I can't help it.
Before I let you go, I ask everyone this question. What is your proudest moment you've had within queer hockey?
Oh gosh, this is maybe gonna feel really mundane because I feel like there have been a number of times, like a first-time skater getting their first goal in the league, huge, right? Rosy hearted. But I think just 2 weekends ago we had a pickup. We had a Queer Hockey Nova Scotia pickup, and it was extra. We welcomed folks out. We'd had a couple, a husband and wife, who had applied to play, and we were like, you know, we would like to open this space up to the wife, but we're going to ask the husband, who has a lot more hockey experience, to step back. And he was like, that's fine. So I'm sitting on the bench and I'm looking out over the rink. This new skater is here, this wife of this couple. Her husband is up playing like shooter with their 6-year-old in the background. And I look out on the ice and there's people wearing Ospreys jerseys, Pride Cup jerseys from 2023, Pride Cup jerseys from 2024, Rainbow League jerseys. Like half of the jerseys on the ice were QHNS jerseys. And I just had this moment of like, okay, we're actually really changing the landscape of what hockey looks like in Halifax, like visually and in this community. And it was a moment for me that really made it feel like it was worth it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really cool. To be able to see that change and that cultural shift it's awesome. It's unbelievable. It's one of the things where after I did about a season of this podcast, and I thought to myself, sort of similar to you there, you're thinking, am I really making a difference? Am I really helping? And then as you talk to more people and you see more people, you actually realize that you are making a difference. So that's amazing to see that out on the ice, all the different jerseys.
Yeah, and I think it's really starting to shift the tide of what's expected and what people should expect from their hockey community specifically. You know, one of our women's league had a little kerfuffle about pronouns, and they had quite a lot of pushback from straight players being like, we don't want this agenda pushed on us. And the queer folks from that league were like, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to go through this anymore because there's another space for us, right? So we're raising the tide for everyone, and that feels really huge. Yeah.
One last thing as well, just before I let you go, has there been much involvement with Pride Tape, etc., like that for Queer Hockey Nova Scotia?
I mean, we love it. We use it. No, we have not. We don't have a formal relationship with them yet. We did a little bit with You Can Play when we were first starting the nonprofit, but we haven't had any kind of product placement. We could use some more product placement, right? Like, yeah, we would love that.
Yeah, awesome. I'll clip that and put it across the socials and see if we can generate
Thanks.
some.
Yeah. We're always taking donations.
Yeah, well, we love Pride Tape. They love this podcast, so maybe we can get something
Yeah.
happening there in that
That would
space.
be awesome.
Is there anything you want to plug before I let you go? Any place that people can find the handles on socials, a website, etc.?
Absolutely. So we have quite a vibrant social media presence. We have Instagram, which is Queer Hockey NS. So the NS is for Nova Scotia. We also have a Facebook page, and our website is qhns.ca. So www. CA for Canada. You can email us at qhns@qhns.ca. And I would love to plug the Pride Cup. We have not opened registration yet, so now is the time to start thinking about that. Come to see Halifax in July. It's the beautiful season. We have beaches, we have gay bars, we have hockey. So we would love to host as many people as possible for that. And if folks are thinking about coming out, we would love to have them.
Awesome. I'll chuck that stuff in the show notes as well, the links, and I'll get you to email me the links through, and I'll chuck that in the show notes so people can find it as well. Nora Rennick Reinhardt, thank you so much for jumping on for episode 24. I've had a really awesome time. I think it's really cool what Queer Hockey Nova Scotia is doing. I think it's awesome what you're doing and all the work that you're putting in for just to change the culture and change the way hockey looks in Halifax. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Andrew. It was such a pleasure.
We are the Pride and Puck Podcast. This is episode 24 of season 3. You can find us at Pride Puck Podcast on the socials and YouTube. Please subscribe, like, share, or do all the good stuff for us. Until next month, where I will be in the hot seat, Nora. I've got a friend of mine interviewing me for episode 25.
Yeah, you're gonna see how it feels. Is that after you start playing hockey? Because you'll have to tell us about your experience.
Yeah, we might be able to organise that actually. Yeah, that could be a possibility after the first game. I feel like
that'd be good for an interview. It would be great to share your first time out on the ice. How much your butt hurts because you're 40.
Yes, exactly. I am Andrew McDougall. That is Nora Rennick Reinhardt. This is the Pride and Puck Podcast. Until next month, we'll speak to you then. Ciao.